In TFT, there are many mistakes you might make that you probably aren't even aware of, whether you're still learning the game or even if you've been playing it for multiple sets now. So in this video, we're going to be going over 8 common mistakes in TFT and how you can fix them. Starting off, we have one of the biggest mistakes in TFT, which is forcing a specific comp regardless of what the game gives you. When you hard force a comp, you're going to be ignoring your early shops, items and augments, and all of these things should be what gives you the direction you need to play towards different comps. This will likely lead you to weaker early and mid game boards and will make you bleed health before you even ever get close to hitting the comp you're trying to force. Instead, what you want to do is play around your strongest opener and build around early pairs or upgraded units with augments and items helping you out with your direction. TFT rewards players that have an arsenal of comps in their locker to choose from, which will lead you to having stronger stages throughout the early and mid game, saving more health, and being able to not only top 4 more consistently, but also fight for first place more often too. As an example, maybe the game offers you an upgraded Viego during the PvE rounds and a flexible item you can slam, but instead of leaning towards a Shadow Ass comp, which is what the game is giving you focus on playing 1-star Yordles instead because you decided before you loaded in that's what you wanted to play. Now, we aren't saying you can't make things like this work, but keeping your options open and seeing what you get given will often yield you better results the majority of the time. Another big mistake that players make is auto leveling up to 4 at stage 2-1 every single game without even thinking about it. This can become a very bad habit that you might do without ever really questioning it, but although leveling can make you stronger by adding in an extra unit, doing it blindly can ruin your economy and put you behind right from the start of the game. The correct approach though is to level with intention. If you can build a strong board that you believe you can win with and play towards a 5 win streak with upgraded units and items you can slam, here's where you want to level up. But if you level up without a good board and without slamming any items, you'll likely start beating some boards and losing against others, and therefore you'll already put yourself at a disadvantage throughout those early stages. Every gold spent early on should serve a clear purpose, since gold is far more valuable in the early game, and reaching 50 gold ASAP is often going to be the best course of action. When you base leveling decisions on your board strength, itemization and augments that give your board power, you won't end up wasting gold, and instead you can set yourself up for more consistent game plans, especially when playing around streaks. Another mistake players make specifically in set 16 is not thinking about their unlocks. Unlocks are a unique addition to the game and often you won't need to think about them too much. However, in quite a few comps, if you don't consider them, you can't actually play towards that comp because you might be missing key units that bring those traits and synergies together. Let's take our Brock and Roll comp for example, and while you're questing with Ichtal on your journey to get Brock unlocked, you don't want to forget about Volibear, as to unlock him you'll need a unit with a ton of health. So remember to grab those giant spelts off carousels and play around bruisers to get more health and get Volibear unlocked. This is also the case with Skarner. If you want to play a late game capped out board around this beefy scorpion, but you forget to build a Gargoyle stone plate to unlock him, you're going to feel pretty bad when you can't make one before it's too late. Once you have decided on your comp, you can boot up our guides, copy the team comp code into the planner, and see how to unlock them in your game to make sure you never forget what to do before it's too late. You can also use the PvE rounds to unlock units. For example, Set, you just want to place 1 unit in the front 2 rows, and instead here you won't be sacrificing a round just to unlock him and losing health you don't need to lose. Next up, we have one of the most common mistakes in TFT, which is greeding for the best in slot items. One of the easiest and fastest ways to bleed out. Holding components on your bench often means your board is playing down an item or even more for multiple stages, and this lost tempo adds up very quickly in the early and mid game. Instead, you want to prioritize strong and flexible items early to preserve health and tempo, especially if you prioritize early utility like anti-heal and Sunder or Shred. Slamming a good enough item that wins you 3 extra rounds is almost always better than holding out for perfection and losing 30 HP. The outcome will be a healthier early and mid game whilst also giving you more time to cap your board later into the game. Really, the only time you do want to hold components is if you're on a loss streak and intentionally want to make sure you keep that loss streak before turning it around and spiking later on. Then we have holding units on your bench and clogging your bench with random pairs or units you might use later on, and this can destroy your economy without you even realizing it. The extra gold sitting on your bench could be the difference between hitting an interest threshold or not. Small econ mistakes like this can leave you much poorer than other players in your lobby and far worse off the later the games go on. It's best to only hold specific units or pairs for your comp once you're already above 50 gold, especially if they don't currently contribute to your board's strength. If you're win streaking, you can prioritize holding pairs, as hitting an upgrade can be worth sacrificing some interest if it significantly improves your board. But selling unnecessary units to hit those economy breakpoints leads to stronger level timings, better rolldowns, and ultimately more stable late games too. What about mistakes when it comes to augments? Well, if you pick an augment and then don't play around it, you're essentially shooting yourself in the foot. There's obvious mistakes like taking slamming and not slamming, but there's also less obvious mistakes you might not even realize you're doing. For example, taking an XP augment like Patient Study, but then opting for a reroll comp because you randomly hit a 2-star 2 cost. If you take that econ augment, this heavily leans towards going for a fast 8 board, as you have a better chance of reaching level 8 before others in your lobby. The same applies if you take a reroll augment like Pandora's Bench, and you're trying to rush level 8 to 3-star a 4 cost. Yes, this might work sometimes, but at the same time, you are down an augment whilst other fast 8 players might already have the experience or econ augment to help them get there faster and take away all the units you want to play around. If you aren't sure which augment to take at 2-1, try and take one based on the early spot you have, depending on which units and items you have already to play with. For example, if you get offered Bringer of Ruin but you don't have any Noxus units, it might sound fun giving stacks to your Atachan, but in reality, you're relying on shop RNG to find those Noxus units ASAP before your augment becomes essentially completely useless. If you aren't sure about what type of comp you want to play and your augment choices don't give you any direction, you can simply go for strong combat or item augments that will give you early board strength and allow you to keep your options open. Next up, we have scouting, and if you aren't doing this, you are essentially playing half the game blindfolded. If you aren't checking other boards, you're not going to know if your comp is contested, or who you might fight next to maintain streaks, or how to position properly, which in the late game especially so can be the difference between a 5th and a 1st. Information is key, and scouting will allow you to pivot when you need to, adjust positioning to win key rounds, and avoid rolling for units that other players are already playing. Even just quick 5-second scans each round make a big difference. Once you build that habit of consistently having a quick scout each stage, you'll save health, win more close fights, and avoid those doomed rolldowns where you basically hit nothing. So check your key bindings, and with a few button presses you'll have scanned the entire lobby. And if you're unsure when to scout, the more often the better, especially before picking any augments. But as a safe bet, use those minion rounds as a reminder to check out the lobby before you dive into the next stage. Finally, the last mistake that many players make is not playing their strongest board. Oftentimes you might tunnel vision on a specific trait and ignore units that can help you play a stronger board, even if it's temporary. TFT rewards tempo, and the strongest board in that moment or that round often can look nothing like your final comp or endgame setup. That early strength buys you time to figure everything else out. Focus on upgrading units, activating useful synergies, and slamming items, because you can always transition to your comp later on. Once you are above 50 gold, or if you're on a win streak, it's important to consider holding pairs when you can, or even holding stronger units like a 3 cost. As the next turn, you might hit a double 3 cost shop in the mid game, allowing you to build an even stronger board. When you get used to keeping your options open and flex in better and upgraded units in and onto your board, you're going to save more health, maintain more tempo, and give yourself far more opportunities to top 4 or more, even in those games where you low roll. Well, that wraps up our quick video about 8 mistakes you may be making in TFT's set 16. Don't forget to click the link below to check out more of our TFT guides, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching, and as always guys, take care.